Dear colleagues and friends, welcome to the first The Future of Independent Publishing conference. To everybody here in this room who is following us from the Agora and to everybody out there in the world who is following us. My name is Tom Krause. I am publisher of Klett-Cotta, and I was one of a group of publishers, agents and scouts who suggested to our friends at the Frankfurt Book Fair to bring some people together here in Frankfurt to talk about important issues of the industry. We are looking back to 18 months when most of us were somehow stuck in present, or even worse, let themselves fall into nostalgia of a better past. And this is why we thought that this is the right moment to make people think and talk about the future, about how we can create new visions for the world of books and how we can maintain the strengths and resilience of independent publishing. Talking about independence, on our list of wonderful speakers on the 3 short panels today, you will see some who are working for companies which are not considered to be the classical indie publishing houses. And we absolutely wanted this to be an encounter for the whole business. In our view, independence is not a characteristic trait of a company, but a quality of a person. It describes the ability of one to act in accordance with his or her own beliefs. I would like to thank very much Porter Anderson, who will be the moderator of this conference and who has organized this event brilliantly together with his wonderful team. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to our wonderful and for this conference perfectly suited keynote speaker, Nele Kegel. Nele Kegel is publisher and co-owner of Meridian Publishers in the Netherlands since May 2019. She publishes great authors such as Hilary Mantel, T.C. Boyle, Ulla Lenze. Before that, she was publisher at Atlas Contact and Signature. She worked as an editor, foreign rights manager, literary agent, and even as a translator from Spanish. She knows the book business, and especially book business in its international relations from many perspectives. And she's a brilliant publisher. So, the floor is yours, Nelike.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to be back in Frankfurt. I'll take you a little bit into the storm of starting an indie publishing house in the middle of a COVID pandemic. So this question came around the middle of September. Oh, if I would be willing to do this 15-minute speech. And every one of us knows, of course, that around August 25, the workload seems to double per day until the end of November, more or less. And then it just gets normally busy. So my first thought was, are you kidding me? I need 48 hours in a day right now, and you want me to say something inspiring? Oh my goodness. But never mind, here we are, to discuss the future of publishing, and to be more precise, the future of independent publishing. So now I'll take you back to the storm that we have just all come out of, for sure. Meridian Publishers is not just an indie, but an indie that had started, like Tom already said, in May 19, with the first book coming out in September of that same year. And we, that is my associate Carla de Jong and me, we barely got a few books out before we all dove headfirst into the pandemic in 2020. We had Judith Chalansky with us at the time, and she got all her trips cancelled in her email one by one, end of February 2020. In April 2020, we still knew very little about the whole COVID thing, I guess. I think we still called it Corona even. We had to decide about postponing or not the publication of The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. In hindsight, it's easy to say, no, of course you had to publish, of course. But we knew so little, and it was a huge production cost and a huge risk for us. So I'm glad we didn't even lower the print run, and luckily that all worked out absolutely brilliant. 6 months later, however, we're in, I think, November 20, we were saying to each other, well, this shouldn't continue for much longer, and then it did. and it still does. So I can honestly say that Thomas Cromwell really pulled us through. Hillary pulled us through. And I think here we come immediately to one of the essential things for an indie. Know your authors personally. It was a guardian angel that made us decide to ask Hillary to come over for a few days in October 19 to do interviews. 7 months before pub date, 5 months before we knew something bad was coming in the form of Corona. Interviews were shelved until May 20, confidentiality agreements, lovely. She was doing revisions at the time of The Mirror and the Light, and she was so good to come to Amsterdam for this. So that is gold to have those interviews around pub date. 2 days after her, Nina Ratishvili comes for the publicity of her next novel. And we took her 10 days with a 4-month-old baby, the babysitter, in the car every day, interviews, bookshops, visits, etc. You can't do that if you don't know your author. That's clear. I have photographs of Guillermo Arriaga eating an omelette at my table amidst 250 books that needed signing. And I wasn't even in India yet at the time. So that's one. Personal relationships with your authors, very important for everybody, more so for indies. Booksellers, super important to have personal relationships with your booksellers. They're your allies in this whole endeavor. Know them, know the stores, know what they want, ask what they can do for you, ask them for blurbs, make them feel part of the whole enterprise, make them part of the story. So that's what we do too. Every week, few booksellers, and it's incredibly useful. All this came to a standstill on and off during lockdowns, special measures, book online a slot, etc. And this is where you see how clicks in such a period of time have an advantage over bricks. Because, well, it's easy, they deliver it on your doorstep. The bad thing is, so few books stayed under the radar because of all the clicks. So I'm not entirely happy about all of that either. You see, clicks give you access to a huge warehouse where you get lost, whereas bricks lead to an exclusive shop, personal attention, they know what you want, you're a regular customer, etc., etc. All super important for indies. On the upside, I think literary reviews, again, have gained renewed effect. That hadn't been the case for a long time, and now it does. At least that's what we notice. On the upside too, in the Netherlands, perhaps more than other countries, because we have this National Institute for the Promotion of the Book, they had a few wonderful awareness campaigns that you might as well buy local online, have an account with your bookshop, your computer remembers it, easy, done. The delivery of the booksellers has strengthened, I think, that whole effect too. They have been delivering at everybody's doorstep. They know their customers now better than ever. Important. Now, there was something that Michael Hayward told me a few years ago when I told him, oh, I'm going to start my own publishing house, small publishing house, lovely. He said, well, Nell, enjoy it while it lasts, because you will accumulate books and authors, whether you like it or not. How very true. We look at the list now and we're astonished by ourselves by how quickly that went. So yes, accumulating, okay. We're finding out along the way that you need a critical minimum of titles per year. Not perhaps when you work from home and you can do your 4 lovely books per year, but with full-scale distribution, an office, etc., you need a certain minimum of books. And we're finding this out along the way now. It's risky to have a 3-month period in the year that you actually have nothing new coming out. So, while that is true, the same holds true for the fact that you cannot hire personnel. You can do more titles, you can do more work, but you still have to divide it over those 2 people that started the whole publishing house in the first place. An extra title is an extra huge amount of time and effort that you put into it, especially the way we do it. And you make investments that won't pay off until maybe a year later, 1.5 years later. So there's that. Next point, finances. Goodness. They need to be kind of tight because it's tricky as it is. You need to have all that in order. So if I look at this all in all, my whole idea is, oh goodness, being an independent is full of fantastic contradictions. You want it small, you want it personal, you want it curated, you want to spend a maximum amount of time on every author, you want tailor-made campaigns for every author, you want to write something on your website regularly, every day preferably. And oh, by the way, how did that website come into existence? It didn't knock on the door for sure. You want to visit the booksellers. You want the authors to come over. You want to run a tight ship with solid financial administration. So there is no end as to what you want to do as an independent. But it grows bigger before you know it. Weeks go by, months go by, that you don't even look at the website. Your first accountant turns out to be a slob. Oh, goodness, do we have to do all this again with a new accountant? Yes, we do. There is a pandemic you never could foresee. Meanwhile, authors line up now, so forget your rest in the weekends. After this pandemic, the next crisis seems to be that there is no paper. So you almost start to hope that you will not have reprints for the few precious titles that you publish, because it would be really too much to bear for a young indie to not to be able to reprint for lack of paper. And then take a deep breath. And you go back to the essential matters of being an indie. Now, in the future, in the past. Know your authors. Know the booksellers. Scale. Find the right equilibrium between keeping it personal and curated, but not too vulnerable. And don't think that you'll have that achieved in 3 years. Distinguish yourself in an overflowing market. How on earth do you do that? Being an indie is being an original, so you look where others don't look. You go off the grid more. You have to be pragmatic, skip auctions because you can't afford them. If you get the chance to do some guerrilla marketing here and there, please, that is very useful to do. Good covers help. The photographer who made the covers for the Cromwell trilogy, she's the daughter of Eddie Postuma de Boer, Tessa Postuma de Boer. She couldn't stop. She needed to make 3 covers. She portrayed all the wives of Henry VIII and Thomas More. And we just had found our Cardinal Wolsey, and then the first lockdown started. So Cardinal Wolsey is still to be portrayed by her. And she managed to sell a bunch of those portraits because they were absolutely gorgeous, which is good for her. And that's a kind of alliance that I like very much and that can be so important. So, 5th, balance your acquisitions list. They can't be all Judith Shalansky's wonderful and delicate. And you don't have to go as far as 50 Shades of Grey in order to make a living, because there is a limited overhead, remember. And 6, very important, I think, stick to the plan. Be flexible, but stick to the plan and don't try to be something that you're not, which is easier said than done, I feel. Because trendy topics have an increasing leverage over what is reviewed. Social media have an increasing leverage over what is discussed in talk shows and newspapers. And books are so often in dire need of a bit of attention in order to sell, or to sell enough. So it's definitely scary sometimes, I feel, to stick to the plan. 7, have the financial stuff in order as good as you can. An indie cannot afford financial nasty surprises, at least not in the first 5 years. And 8, maybe that's the most important, and here I am talking to myself as well. Be confident that your lucky strike will come at some point. And then if I look at the future, yeah, there are worries. If you read in the newspapers for the umpteenth time, and this is kind of frequently so in the Dutch newspapers, oh, children and young adults, no, they have worse and worse reading skills. How on earth will they then ever appreciate to learn to appreciate a text, a literary text, to such an extent that they'll want to pick up another one and another one? So how can we make the magic happen if the reading skills are just somewhere down there? The magic of that first book that is so important and that transports you to another world, but that also makes you addicted to reading books in general. And you're hooked for life after that. And reading literature especially, I guess, it expands your world. It makes you realize there is more out there than your street, your city, your views, your way of life. And it looks we're going to need a lot of exactly those readers at a time of quite unforgiving opinions about many things. Sorry. And then again, how can I not worry about the fact that the entertainment industry is not just stealing away reading time, which is fair enough, but there seems to be an unstoppable amount of famous or half famous or on their way to be famous people from that same industry that feel the need to write a book which creates staggering amount of kind of memoir-ish, biography-ish, wisdom-ish books that then proceed to sell widely because that person is a known person. So for me, that is another chance to get to know the magic. Poof, gone. And that's also one of those things where I sometimes ask myself, oh, should I branch out and start doing biographies of famous Dutch people, for example, and make money? But that would mean that I would be trying to be something or someone that I'm not. Apart from that, it's expensive and very time-consuming. Or, well, you know, what if a new pandemic comes? More lockdowns, dropping book sales, unless your author is a famous author, under lockdowns. The numbers are going up in Netherlands. In the Netherlands, I read all the time now, there will be extra measures taken a few weeks from now. What does that mean for booksellers, etc.? And I think it's safe for us to say in this line of business, maybe more so for literary fiction, that's possible. The personal contact is so vital. It can be substituted for a while by Zoom, by Teams. We've experienced that now, but not forever. And I'm really curious to see for the bigger publishing houses that are possibly cutting costs to get the job done into this personal contact area, if they will find themselves with a kind of drying up well 2 years from now, underestimating, because you cannot measure it, underestimating forever the effect of those personal contacts. I do also wonder if traveling will pick up again as before. And that concerns work trips, book fairs, authors' visits, fellowships, international festivals. Deals will be made, rights will be sold, but will we become more reluctant really to leave our country for overseas trips, for example? You see, I need one of my last... I lost one of my last pages. Going to see if I find it here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You see, for example, I've been to the Guadalajara Book Fair for a number of times. And it is those trips that now make me the publisher of somebody like Alejandro Zambra. It's where I've met Paulina Flores. It's where I've met Guillermo Arriaga. It's where I've met a ton of other authors. And no, you cannot measure, and it's expensive, but not half as expensive as entering a 6-way auction. And it's time consuming, but it's so inspiring and such a breath of fresh air. I call that efficient. And for an indie, it's the best investment one can do. So you see, there's so much to say, much more to say about all of this. And I look forward to those panel discussions. My experiences, of course, are still very limited. We're here for 2.5 years, not even, with a pandemic of 16 months going on. And our start perhaps was atypical in the way that the noblesse oblige factor of taking Hilary Mantel and Nino Haratischvili with you means that you cannot act like oh, hello, we'll start our own indie publishing house. No, you have to be incredibly efficient and professional right from the start if you have authors like Hilary Mantel and Nino Haratischvili. And I'm sure that indies that have been around for much longer, they have different views, different experiences. Well, nobody had an experience with the pandemic, that's for sure. Reached more wise conclusions, mature conclusions. I'm still in the middle of this storm, and I would say the more views, the merrier, actually. But I also say this, independent publishing and the future of independent publishing, it will always be there. because it's a human nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelleke. It was great to hear from you. This is a wonderful opening for us that Nelleke Giel has just given us from the Netherlands, because she gave us such a sophisticated picture of the difficulties that go into independent publishing. I'm Porter Anderson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Publishing Perspectives, and with her and with Tom's introduction, I'd like to get us deeper into the program now. What we're on about is independent publishing and its future, which has come into special relief, of course, during the pandemic stresses. The ways that this is impacting large publishing houses and publications are more clear to us, more easily seen, more easily understood, in many cases, than they are for independent publishing. And when we speak of independent publishing, we're talking of a whole array of professionals who work in the industry. We're going to be meeting with many of them here this afternoon, and I'm very pleased to start with my partner in crime here, Jürgen Bose, who is, of course, the president and CEO of Frankfurter Buchmesse, has been good enough to find time to join us for our first panel here. It is in a conversation, I think, by Zoom, that Jürgen and I were talking months ago about what we're doing this week, about Frankfurter Buchmesse, about this year's very special Frankfurt Book Fair, and we talked about the opportunity it gave us to look at independent publishing. We have such a wonderful response coming in from so many countries of independent publishers who are with us this week, physically, as well as, of course, some who are working with us digitally. And we wanted to take that chance and take that opportunity to give it some real focus. And so thanks to Tom's help, thanks to Nelleke's help, thanks to Jürgen's help, and thanks to some of the folks you're going to meet now, we've been able to prepare an entire session of Frankfurt Studio here, which I hope you're watching every hour. It's producing material all day. We're in our new studio facility here, we've been able to put together an entirely focused look at independent publishing, and we hope you'll enjoy our conversation now. Jürgen, I'd like to start with you, because I know what your schedule is like, and you may have to dart away at any moment. I get that. What's interesting to me when we start looking at our first panel's question, which is, what is the future of this kind of meeting, international events, and of rights trading? When we look at that, what are you seeing are the signals coming to you from what we're doing this week? How are you hearing the enthusiasm? How are you hearing the challenges, the opportunities? What are people saying to you about it?
Now, in the past few days, I had the chance to talk to quite a lot of people, since I was surprised we have more than 80 nations here in Frankfurt this week. And regarding the travel restrictions, I never thought this would happen like this. So when people come to me, they say, I'm here to support you. I'm here to support Frankfurt.
Wow.
I missed Frankfurt. I missed the other people. And actually, I'm here to do business. Last night, I talked to some French publishers saying, our collective stand is wonderful. It's so busy. It's even more busy than it used to be in 2019. So actually, this collective format, being together on a huge stand, it's 900 square meters, really helps their business. Yep. Also, we have a lot less people here.
Wow.
So there's a lot of positive energy. We have these wide aisles actually here, and I thought everybody will get lost in there. No, it's busy. It's so interesting to see that. I was quite pessimistic. Now I'm very optimistic, actually, also for the years to come.
Right.
Yeah. And what you said, to me, it looks like, thanks to independent publishing, this venue, this Frankfurt is going to become more international in the years to come. Yeah, I'm just getting back from a lunch with Stefan von Holzbring saying, I want the book fair to become more international. So you have conglomerates, you have independents. Right. Yeah. It might look different, more collective stands, not the big towers, but I think there's a future for a lot more business between independents, more international.
I'm hearing this from people in our guest of honor contingent too. Canada is our guest of honor this week, as you probably know, here at Frankfurt. And I was just meeting with Kristen Cochran, who is the CEO of Penguin Random House in Canada. And what Kristen was telling me was that she was stunned how international it is. The thought originally in her mind and in many people's mind was, well, it's a primarily German fair, of course. And am I right that it's about 60% international in terms of the exhibitor ranks that come in?
No, I guess it would be half-half this
Half and
year.
half,
Yeah.
yeah.
Usually it used to be like 75, 67%, 70% international.
International.
30%. When I started 16 years ago, it was the other way around. So we have a long-term trend, actually, what we're seeing. This
Right.
place becoming more and more international.
Right. What about rights trading? What do you see as the trends heading there? We have a very good contingent in the LIDAC, yeah?
It's nice to see the people in the LIDAC, but actually we're missing a lot of people from the UK.
Ah,
So again, the French are saying, oh, that's fine. That's perfect. Yeah, let's do business with somebody else. So it's a UK people from UK, which is quite nice to
Yep.
see how this industry suddenly sees the opportunity. There's a gap. Let's do business with somebody else.
I love that. I think that's great. And speaking of the collective stands, how many of them are there? There's a large contingent of them, yes?
Yeah, when I said about 80 nations, we have about 55, 60 national collective stands,
Right.
from Kazakhstan to Poland, French, Italian, Spanish, you name them. And you know the Spanish, so we have a Catalan, we have a Basque, we have another Galician stand. So
Yep.
that's nice.
Yep. That's wonderful. I think it's great. Let's talk with Maria Lynch, who is coming to us from Barcelona. Maria Lynch, and it is Lynch and Casanovas? Casanovas and Lynch.
Casanovas and Lynch.
Thank you. I'm about to get the name wrong, of course. Casanovas and Lynch is one of our favorite agencies. They send us constant, wonderful listings for our rights roundups at Publishing Perspectives, with which we're able to keep people informed of where some of the best trading action is going on, and we always appreciate hearing from you. But in one of the things that you were saying to me in our exchange earlier, Maria, you were saying that these meetings will always exist because I suppose you see a very integral human interaction nature to the industry itself, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that I agree. That the thing, I think publishing is a community and it's all about sharing information
Right.
within the community and also with the readership and with the public. And I think that sharing has to be done in a space. And of course we can bring Zoom, and in the same way we brought email or we brought other media into the conversation. Of course, it's evolved over the years, but finding the trust, the relationships, the sort of the buzz of the books, the serendipity of finding someone is very important.
Yeah.
And I think gatherings are very important because they bring unexpected meetings into your business, because of course you can plan Zooms with people you already know or with publishing houses you already have a
Right.
relationship with, but you miss that opportunity of meeting someone who you don't usually talk to that's interesting for the business. One of the things I love about the Frankfurt Book Fair is that when we go back to our offices, there's always like 5, 10, 15 publishers I didn't know that I've met at the fair
Right.
and that I wouldn't have met otherwise.
Yep.
And like Nelleke was saying, we also have like trips to London or trips to Milan or trips to Paris. But then you don't have the international conversation between all those editors who are in a way beyond my recommendation. So I might talk to a publisher about a book and then he will talk with someone he bumps into an aisle about the book I just told him about and may interest him, or the other publisher may have read the book and he has, and so that sets the conversation going, which is very difficult to have a ball rolling when you're talking through a screen and with so elongated in time instead of a 3-day concentrated gathering.
I know what you're saying, because one of the things I love that Nelleke said was that to be an independent is to be an original. And that's great, but it's hard to find an original if you're not in a setting like Frankfurt, where there are so many different people and different publishers and different companies and different roles coming into play at once. How do you find the original unless you know to look for it, right? I know exactly what you mean. It's quite tricky.
And you know, it's a bit. I think it's similar to what happened with ebooks
Yep.
and physical books. It's great that you have the technology. It's great that you can download books immediately, but you lose the experience of going to the bookstore and finding a book you weren't looking for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the good thing about fairs or gatherings or the publishing community.
I think you're absolutely right. Let's talk then also to Rebecca Savadio, who is a scout based in London. This is very close to what you were saying to me, Rebecca, because one of the things I thought was smart that you were talking about was that while we can Zoom, and boy have we been Zooming to the point we're ready to shoot ourselves, but you can do Zoom, you can meet together very well that way, you can actually do business, and this is great, we're fortunate we had it. But at the same time, you were saying, and I found this interesting, I hadn't heard anyone else say this, that there's going to be a point at which the returns are diminishing, that it just simply can't keep the forward motion going, and inertia of sorts is going to start setting in and slowing everything down, and we have to get back together.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think you can't discount the fatigue. You know, the fatigue that comes from a whole series of. I'm already moving my hands around, but the fatigue that comes from. You know, obviously COVID it's been a shock to the system. It's been traumatic. It's been difficult. The effort of business and keeping connections alive and keeping things flowing. And, you know, for me, I work with people in all sorts of different countries around the world to keep that thing going, keep conversation flowing and books flowing, obviously primarily all different time zones. There's a sameness about Zoom that you know, obviously when you meet people in person, the fact that you have people's body language and charm and you know, you can break things up in a way that just on a screen that is always the same screen in the same place at the same. It's very hard with the best will in the world. It's really hard to do that, and I do think, you know, I mean, I think. I don't think we're beyond Zoom, I suppose, is what I was saying to you also, in as much as I think we now live in a hybrid working space and we need to think about the pluses and the minuses and the lessons to learn from, because there are a lot of lessons, you know, in terms of things that I've learned in my job that has changed dramatically, that has been improved, I think, in the sense of, you know, having more than two in the sense of thinking about the publishing calendar as Frankfurt and London. There were kind of two principal interactions with all the different publishers. It is now completely different, but to understand that one thing is, you know, doesn't eradicate the importance of the other, really, is that, you know, you need relationships to be able to develop them further. You need relationships to be able to innovate. You know, to be an independent thinker, you need to spice things up a little bit and think about it.
Exactly.
And opportunities, you know, it's hard to see them on Zoom, I think.
Yep.
And then I think too, you know, something that, like, we live in an evolving space, and actually it's very hard for people that are not already in to come in on Zoom. You know, it's just you will never make a network if you don't know people on Zoom, and to think about actually what, you know, the future should look like, where publishing is going, where book fairs are going, where events are going, where, you know, whether it's book launches or book tours or, for me, client visits or coming to those things, if we don't think about them actively. And I mean, I do feel like I came to Frankfurt to support Frankfurt. It's really important, but it's also really important to say, you know, for me, working with people in lots of different countries, is to say, if you don't take a stance and say this thing is important, people are important, you know, we will lose a lot in that. And something critical in you know, what is literary diversity. I think sometimes that conversation around literary diversity, it sort of becomes polarized in a way that forgets that actually it's people that make that thing diverse. It's lots of different people that need to come into the business moving forward. It's really hard, I think, without gatherings, without book fairs, without a bit of challenge, really.
Exactly. It's hard to break in.
I think so, yeah.
And what we finally come down with is that there is simply no Frankfurt Agora in cyberspace. There's no such thing as this open area where wonderful, intelligent, innovative people are wandering around and meeting each other, right? You don't sit down on a bench when you're on Zoom and go, "Oh, how are you? What do you do?"
Can we go to the breakout room?
You know, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that we haven't been able to match it. And as I was saying with Marcus Dohle yesterday, we have to be careful because we're a very fortunate industry in that we were able to use the tools of technology during the pandemic. We could send entire gigantic staffs home of the size that Marcus has and let them work from home offices and keep going. Now, this is very fortunate. A lot of industries can't do that. We know how fortunate we were, and it's good that we've learned to use these tools. But I'm feeling exactly what you're feeling. I'll tell you, my thing, Jürgen, that I started realizing was that the problem of not being at Frankfurt is that you are in your office and you're sitting there trying to focus on a meeting for Zoom or trying to do a webinar with 3 wonderful people, perhaps, online, and the phone is ringing, and the television is on in the next room, and the children are right over here, and the dog is on the other side, and your life is going on. When we're able to travel to these events, we actually can leave the daily life behind. We've got the phones reminding us of it, but to some degree, that physical remove helps us focus. And so then when we sit down in the Agora, we actually notice the people around us instead of the confusion and the complexity of being in your daily life, in your office, in your home, wherever you're working from, and trying to be in this congregate setting that we enjoy here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's on the one hand, it's focus, it's serendipity, what you said before. And I think more important is actually that you build up trust by seeing people. You might not close a deal here in Frankfurt, but if you meet your publisher from the first time from Kazakhstan, yeah, you need to meet him like 2-3 times in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Then you start thinking about maybe I should do business in Kazakhstan. Yeah. So you need that. If you meet the Netflix people for the first time, yeah, you have a second thought. How's the contract going to look like? I have to go back, talk to my lawyer anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, it needs some time to build up trust, and then you can go to Zoom and close the deal. Yeah. So it's complementary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, in the same way writers very rarely write a book that defines a career, is that people have to grow into their careers, you know, and develop and how you people your career and how you understand, that takes time, you know, it takes more than one fair, it takes more than one meeting. It's very hard to do, I think, in a snap Zoom call.
It is hard. And I was impressed because initially we were concerned about how many people might be able to make it to Frankfurt. Immediately, as soon as we started talking about an in-person Frankfurt, I started getting the emails going, "Are you going to Frankfurt? Are you going to be there?" And I realized that this groundswell of energy was there, which tells me that the future of international meetings and of rights trading is in person, is still there. But as Jürgen is saying, with these newly learned tools that we've been working with during the pandemic, to close deals, to follow up on things, even to nudge people along, the internet can be very useful for reminders and that kind of thing, and to say, "And I'll see you at the next meeting," meaning you better make a decision, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that work for you?
It works, and I was going to say that what I found useful about Zoom especially was sort of wrapping up after and also bringing together people who are physically in different places.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
In film deals, for example, where someone is in London, someone is in New York, someone is in LA.
Right.
Or in the future, when we're talking about the launch of an author and I need sort of 15 publishers, which I'm not going to gather in Spain or anywhere else to talk about the launch of a book, but I can via Zoom. Then it's something very different. It's not selling the rights, it's not sharing the information, it's just organizing and coordinating something.
Coordination is a good word, exactly. It's the
It has
orchestrating.
focus as well, you know.
Yeah.
I think, I do think one of the things, it's really back ends with what you said beforehand in the sense of focus, is the thing with Zoom has become, for me, it's the same as email. It's like every day, all of the time. And so how you motor and animate every day, all of the time is complicated. And obviously you need to be able to do both. Really, it's, I suppose, also why we're streaming this event is how do you reach people who are unable, for whatever reason, leaving the pandemic out of it, but whatever reason, to be there. Of course, you don't want to lose them.
Exactly.
But how do you do that thing, without focus, without a reason? We're doing this for this author, or it's very hard to do over a period of, time, elongated time.
I think it's a great point. It's one of the things that makes us excited about Frankfurt Studio is that for the first time we have a chance to originate our content and share it with those who can't be with us this time. Hopefully they'll be with us next time, but there will always be somebody who needs to see it from afar, and that's a useful thing. We've got just a few minutes left, and I'd like to check in with each of you then about what, from your perspective, is needed for the future we want to see of basically this integrated form of physical work together and of technological work together. Jürgen, what does the international festival book trade show, book fair scene need the most from the industry for its future?
Yeah, I actually do believe that in the near future a lot of more book fairs are going to specialize. Now we're seeing the Paris Book Fair. It's changing its profile to become more reader-focused, to become more a festival, obviously. Yeah, some of the festivals try to concentrate more of, let's say, partnerships with other media sectors, with other industries. Frankfurt always has to be everything, but also we have to dig deeper, to offer more trainings which are very, very focused, what we mentioned before, to give us more background information, deeper information on some territories maybe, on some sort of product. Children, young adult is again in the process of transforming, We need to have more information. It's more about benchmarking. So it's a lot of it is more about quality than quantity. So that's what I'm seeing for Frankfurt at least. And I think a lot of book fairs, we are sharing ideas. Like every 6 weeks I'm meeting with my friends from book fairs from all over the world, from Seoul to wherever, Göteborg, and we exchange ideas, and we're working all in the same direction, and it's all about quality.
This is particularly interesting. I know that you know Marisol, who works at Guadalajara, is the director there, and one of the things she said that she's noticed is that she must be different every year in order to keep up with the required specializations that she's seeing.
Yeah, you don't need to be different. It's more the level of quality you have to offer. There has to be a red line anyway. But again, you have to be open for new things. So it's a different fair every year, but it's not the need to be different.
Interesting. I like that distinction. That's good. Mario, what do you see from the literary agent's viewpoint? What needs to happen for the future of these gatherings?
Well, in my experience, what is really helpful when I think about sharing information with publishers is having authors around. And I like going to literary festivals, and I think it's useful to have that combination of authors and publishers at the same time, also for making, I don't know, gathering new ideas, and my guess would be like finding a sort of a format which is in a way similar to what the film industry has, which is a mix between a film festival and the trade gathering there around what you were already there to watch.
And you're very right. We see that at the Berlinale. There's a lot more of that interchange. I think a lot of authors would love to hear you say this too, because there sometimes I think in their community there's a sense that the trade show is for the publishers and the agents, and they don't want us around, which is of course not the case. Maybe that's something we need to work on more seriously. That's a great observation. And Rebecca, what do you think is needed at this point? You're in such a specialization. I mean, it's really a subset of a subset, being the scout. How does it look to you?
I mean, and I say this, I suppose, also as somebody who is based in London. I think, that it's all about the community and collective and bringing people together and thinking, we're going through, a period of insularity, really, and, in lots of different ways, even talking to publishers in different countries. Some of it's COVID-related and some of it's not, when people tell you, it's my local book that, my local authors are selling more, I can do more promotion around my local authors. And I think that one of the downsides and the big risks about this whole period is that they're publishers, and not only corporate publishers, lots of publishers that are kind of, trying to reduce costs and not encouraging travel, not encouraging people meeting up. I mean, it's one of the things I think is so clever about the collective stands actually is bringing people together who do work in the same industry, but sometimes don't know one another. And
Exactly.
and actually they need to know one another, they need to work together. And I personally would love to see, big publishers, but small publishers too, really invest in young people and actually enable them to travel more and to meet one another. And fellowships are great, but some of them are by nature reduced in number, and actually there should be more people from different parts of the world at different stages, not only necessarily editorial people. Sometimes it's really great to have people, from a wider range in the industry, so that young people also understand how important book selling is and how important marketing. I just think if we don't invest in people and young people, and of course authors, it's true too, but I think people in publishing need to fight for the well-being of this part of, it's so essential.
I think that's very well said. And one of the things I like the most that we do is our invitation program, our fellowship programs that bring both young people and folks from emerging markets
I think it's really
into
important.
the mix with us. So there's much to do in the future, obviously. We need to have our meetings together. We also need to use our technological tools together, but I keep hearing together. And that is really what we're looking for. And I thank you all for this. Jürgen, Maria, Rebecca, you've been terrific. These are all very fine insights. Stay with us. We're going to take a very quick turnover moment to change into our next panel, and we'll be right back and have another discussion. I'm Porter Anderson. Thanks.